Um, these kind of situations are fluid. They just don't have all of the answers immediately. As you can tell from the last press conference just recently, there was a tremendous amount of talk about all the resources involved in this. And, two of the people that were sent there were from the BAU, and that's usually to do what they call criminal investigative analysis, or CIA. That is my background in terms of, criminal behavior analysis in relationship to those who choose children. So that's my expertise. But it crosses over, obviously, because I've worked homicides for many, many years. And it crosses into understanding some of the behavioral aspects in relationship to the victimology, in relationship to the targets here. The police have made it very specific that these children were targeted. And when I say children, I'm speaking, from a parent's perspective. No disrespect to the victims, but to their parents, they are their children. And that's where I come from in relationship to that verbiage. So who are the four students, right? And this is important to understand each one of these kids, because what the investigators first have to do upon responding to that scene is start to immediately establish who the victims are. And that obviously goes right into, as you folks have come to know, and hopefully are coming to know even further, what we would call a victimology. Now, we have four absolutely amazing children here. And each one of these kids is excelling in life. They are each, Ethan is athletic, Madison is, and two of the girls were studying, marketing. One was studying general studies, but they all had a career path and they had visions. They're, high achievers in relationship to what they were doing in high school before they even got to a university setting. And that's critical to understand, because sometimes, when kids, separate from school, high school to the university, as we all know, there's this mass transformation into adulthood and into this spirit of freedom. Okay. So what we want to do then is take a look at their backgrounds in relationship to their, friends, family, acquaintances, anybody that would have been in their circle right up until the other night when these poor children were found. Okay. And so the idea behind that is critical to understand, because we want to look for general behavioral characteristics that would indicate exposure based on what we call the risk continuum, the victim risk continuum. And then we want to measure that exposure to the environment, situation, and circumstance. And we've talked about this before on our channel. But in this particular case, I want to, talk about what type of exposure each of these children or each of these victims had into the public arena and into the environment as a whole. Because if we then now, have to start looking through the lens of the hunter, i.e. the individual that would potentially, violate and commit this crime, there was a high probability that that individual was familiar with that public persona exposure from these victims. And so that's where social media comes in. And in today's society, you want to try to lower your risk as much as possible. But when you're in a college setting and you're, enjoying life, you're not bothering, or you are 100%, just living life as a good person, which all four of these children are and were doing, that puts them on a very low risk. And then you add the house, that's even a lower risk. Okay? But you also then have the social media aspect of this that could raise it just a little, because that puts an exposure out there where the suspect potentially could have come across any one of these four kids. So if you look at like an L shape, for an example, in fact, let me get my trusty notebook. I'll show you. All right, I'm going to write it out. I should have had this prepared on a slide. Sorry. But we'll do it now. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this. Okay, it's an L. Okay, and it says environment, situation, circumstance, low, medium, or high. Okay, and what the investigators will do right away is put each of these victims in one of these spots here: low, medium, or high risk activities. And what that does is it then gives the investigators a lens in relationship to where they should be looking. So down here, okay, there's a higher probability. The lower the risk of the victim, the higher the probability that the victim was targeted by somebody within inside of their social or media. Had access to the residence at some point. Somebody had access to each of the kids at some point. At some point, their paths had crossed. Okay. And that's why it's so important to narrow down through a victimology, in which the investigators, I guarantee you, are doing, where those paths should have crossed. And that's what they call contact points. And that's critical to understand in a behavioral analysis aspect from what we call CIA, criminal investigative analysis. Okay. And the reason for that is because then you can start understanding what those circle of influences were. Are there individuals in there that were controlling? Are there individuals in there that were, stalking? Are there individuals in there that had obsessive compulsive behaviors? Are there people in there, who fit into, nocturnal type of environments very comfortably, almost like chameleon type? And so that's the first step that they've taken in this investigation. I can assure you of that. Okay? So it's important to go look at each one of these kids' social media networks. And there is one on one of the children. That one video is really interesting, because it sounds like there's a male voice that's saying, "I told you not to," or "Don't wear that outfit," or something like that. And I think it's Maddie's. So if you go to her TikTok page, you can hear the very first video where that sound. I don't know if it's made up, or if it's, she's actually yelling at somebody, but you hear this male voice that says, "Don't wear that outfit anymore." Okay. So when you get a chance, it's on her TikTok page. It's the very first video, and she's dressed up by almost like Raggedy Ann and Andy, and I believe it was through back in October for Halloween. Okay, those are the kind of things that you want to, you really want to get to see, right, quickly. And so those are the kind of things that I'm going to talk about here this evening. All right, the police timeline is very consistent. We just had the the press conference, nothing has changed. And we're going to talk about, the characteristics of the crime scene tonight, my opinion. We're going to talk about, a whole bunch of things. Okay. So the time frame, the police timeline, and by the way, we're only going to stick to facts. I am not here, in any way, shape, or form, to go off of what the law enforcement has already released. So this is, and so that's, one of those things. Okay. They've cleared a lot of people. They've cleared the driver. They've not mentioned any of the personal relationships, so I'm not going to mention them either. Okay. But in that social media context, it's important to realize if that is out there, the individual who is responsible for this potentially caught it as well. Okay. And I guess that's really my point in even raising that tonight, right? It's one horrible thing after another. So that's it. And by the way, if very grateful, and I'll get to them later because those of you who know me, I get pretty focused because it's just how I am, unfortunately. Okay. So the timeline is consistent. There's nothing changing there, but bear in mind the investigation is fluid. Okay. It's fluid. And that means law enforcement may change, pieces of this puzzle as the investigation continues to move forward. Okay. As it continues to move forward. All right. So what are the facts to date, right? November 12th, Kaylee and Madison were at a local bar called the Corner Club at 202 North Main Street in downtown Moscow, and between 10 p.m. and 1:30 a.m. Between 10 p.m. and 1:30 a.m. Kaylee and Madison were seen on video at a local food vendor called the Grub Truck at 318 South Main Street and used a private party for a ride home from downtown to arrive at their 1122 King Road residence at 1:45 a.m. That individual has been cleared, according to the law enforcement, as well as the individual seen on the video at the Grub Truck food vendor truck. Okay. And this was the following week after Parents' Weekend at the University of Idaho. So the week before, there were, thousands of people in town, family, friends, relatives, strangers. But this weekend, they had all gone home. Okay. There may be some stragglers, but probably not through the week and back into the weekend. So investigators have determined that Ethan and Xana were seen at Sigma Chi House on the University of Idaho campus at 735 North Perth Street at approximately 1:45. Okay. So they're at the location of the fraternity when the girls are returning home at 1:45. So at some point they get home. It sounds in Kylie because if they're at the location, there's Buddy, everybody. If they're at the university frat party or whatever it was at 1:45 and the girls are arriving home at 1:45, then they probably crossed each other. And my guess is, and well, we don't have evidence of this, so I'm not going to guess, but it sounds like they may have been home just before the other two coming in. Ethan and Xana are believed to return to the residence in 11, and it was previously reported that Ethan resided at the home. However, it's been determined that he was only visiting that night. So rumors were that it was floating around that he lived there, but that's not true. He was there with his sweetheart. There were other roommates at this house who returned home at 1 o'clock in the morning. The two other roommates at this point are not involved as well. This is a 3-story home, and it's feasible that each of the parties had a floor. And so the location of where each of these kids slept has not been revealed, but I'm sure we will soon hear about that. So at 11:58 a.m., officers respond to the residence after a 911 call, and it was reported of an unconscious individual, and the roommate had called. Now, imagine being that poor person having to discover what they discovered. So upon arrival, officers discovered all 4 individuals deceased inside the residence, and then autopsies were performed on November 17th, and the identity of all 4 murder victims was given, and the manner of death was a homicide by stabbing. The coroner stated, and it has been said even today, that all 4 victims were asleep. Some had defense wounds, and each was stabbed multiple times. And we'll get back to that. There was no sign of sexual assault. That's really important. That's really important. At the time of the investigations to this date, detectives do not believe 2 surviving roommates or the male at the grub truck surveillance video are involved in this crime. That's important to know. Additionally, online reports of the victims being tied and gagged are inaccurate. Okay, so we need to stay away from that. Okay. The identity of the 911 caller has not been. As part of the investigation, detectives have seized the contents of 3 dumpsters on King Road to locate possible evidence. That could be clothing, that could be weapon, could be a bunch of stuff. We can just check boxes for weeks on what it could be. We don't know. But the investigators collected it, and so they're going through it, I'm positive. Additionally, detectives have contacted local businesses to determine if a fixed blade knife had been recently purchased. All right, and then anyone with information is asked 837-180. 208-883-7180. Please call that number if you have information or have seen something, or if you have video, Ring cameras, car video from your dash cams, anything that you feel could be important. It could be that one piece of the puzzle. Okay. They're looking for additional leads. All the victims were asleep in their bed during the attack, according to today's press conference. Also, according to today's press conference, areas of interest are within the city. They're looking for all video within the city, anything. Again, they reiterated, the 2 roommates are not involved. The male at the truck is not involved. The individual who gave them the private ride is not involved. The 3 dumpsters were searched and nothing was found. Again, this goes back to that other slide where today I just added this slide, and you can see that this investigation is already fluid. Okay. At first, telling us they found nothing in them. They have not located a weapon, and no one is currently in custody. All right, so let's look at the exterior of this building. So it's important to know from a geographical profiling aspect, and I'm not a profiler, I'm a behavior analyst, from this principle of how many points of entry do we have here, right? Just in the front alone, there are 3. You have 2 windows and a door, and maybe 4, if that is a ledge, maybe 5 up onto the second floor there where somebody could feasibly pull themselves up. So you have 5 potential points of entry just in the front. But I'm going to show you something in a little bit that I think may be in play here. Now, we learned that the front door may have a keypad on it, and that access to it depends on if it was broken or if it was working that day. But logically, if it is not working and depends on what kind of house this was in terms of people coming and going, friends, it's a college campus. I would suspect that if you have 2 bedrooms on the bottom, 2 at top and 1 in the middle where the kitchen was, or 2 and 2 all the way up, you have 6 bedrooms. My suspicion is that the bottom floor roommates would more often than not lock their doors because it could have been a high traffic area, which would have put them at a higher risk for a problem. And I'll explain what I mean by that here in a minute. So here we have, and I pulled this off of the real estate photos. This is the balcony. This is another point of entry. Two, two, three. Thank you, Alan. All right, this is the one I think we want to talk here. So we have potential points of entry in the front of the residence. Okay. But we also have 2 other possible, what we call POEs, the sliders. And it looks like that balcony off of the 3rd floor there. I saw some pictures where the girls were taking pictures from up there. We don't know the configuration in relationship to who slept where. The authorities have not released that information yet. There's people guessing, but I don't know. I don't have firsthand information, so I'm not going to say that yet. Okay. So we can talk about possibilities, though. And then you can tell me down in the chat in the comments what your thoughts are. But so it's important to see what the configuration of this house is, because this is what the suspect saw, either A, as a point of entry or a point of exit. I think the evidence may lean more towards the front door as a point of POE, point of entry. Okay. And we'll share that. I'll share my thought process on that. All right, so this is the top floor. You can see the stairwell to the left there. Okay. You can see one of the bedrooms off to the right. Okay. And this is going to be significant here. All right. One of the things I want you to notice quickly is this stairwell from the first floor to the second floor. And what is immediately to the right? That is the front door. Okay. Now, thinking, if this individual came through that front door, immediately to his left, he had access point to go upstairs. Okay. And that means if he went to the top floor first and worked his way down in a structured, organized manner, then when he got to the bottom, and if the other two roommates were on the bottom, they could have had their doors locked and even heard something and got even more scared. Because the type of attack that we're, talking about here is right a blitz style of attack where the authorities are saying these poor children are in their bed sleeping. Okay. So if this subject touched anything in that house, there could be touch DNA, there could be all kinds of stuff in there. And I guarantee you they have hit that house with everything available on the market. This reminded me of the case years ago where I think it was named Specht. He killed 8 nurses. But that particular problem was motivated by SA. I'm not seeing that in this particular problem here. It could be post, but this subject here has just graduated into a serial offender mode. So hypothetically, if he comes through the door there, let's say he had access to the keypad, he has a choice. I can make a left turn and immediately go upstairs to a targeted attack, or I can try the bottom, and hypothetically, if those doors were locked, he goes into plan, up those stairs. Something to think about. Okay, this is the second floor here. And then the one on the bottom there, right bottom is the top of the third floor. Okay. But the second floor, the two, that's the kitchen, and that is the patio. And the deck is above that patio. And this is point of entry from the front door to the slider here too. So this could be another point of entry into the house. Okay. And it's going to be critical to understand potentially what an offender is processing and thinking. This is the third floor on the, and there are multiple bedrooms up there, and it looked like there was a little like lounge area or something also on the second floor. You can go look at the address through this property management company. Here's a closer look. I believe this is the first floor. The 2 bedrooms down on the bottom. The 3rd level, the stairs are split. Yes, correct. They go both ways, right. Very good point. Thank you for pointing that out. All right, we get a closer look, and it looked like this, this is your regular average, great place to be, as a student. You're excited. The girls, spend a lot of time here studying, learning, living life. What 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 they total innocent victims. 1,000,000%. But there was somebody out there who was paying attention. And we're going to talk about the possibility of that based on the evidence that we know so far. And years ago, during the 8 nurses, he gathered everybody up. But this case is different, but it's similar because it was one man that controlled 8 women. And I think Ethan was a curveball for him. Okay. And there are a total of 3 floors. Yes, there are. All right. So crime scene indications about the offender. So a controlled offense, it appears. The victim location is known, and I'm going to break this down a little bit more. The suspect was able to depersonalize a victim, i.e., no conversations taking place. Sudden violence attacks. However, the scene is random and potentially sloppy based on some of the information that's been provided out into the public, i.e., people saying that, authorities saying he could have, transfer on him or something to that effect. Okay. However, because there were a minimal use of restraints, he was able to overpower all of his victims. The victims were left in view, i.e., if they're in their beds, he didn't remove them, he didn't move them. And if he did, it was primarily due through the struggle. Okay. Is probably left behind. And because the victims were left at the scene, it's not part of a fantasy process outside of the rage in the attack. Because the targeted attack, the weapon is very personal to this offender. Very personal to this offender. And so in this type of case, or the investigators would want to know what the wound patterns were. It would be essential to understand that, because then we would understand, how much organization took place in relationship to this, right? Because if it's an organized offender, usually you're going to see a lot less problem. If it's a disorganized situation, which a disorganized offense type, the individual obviously would have much more problem, and they would use much more controlled rage, which is a clarity of focus. So that individual is typically below average of intelligence. They're socially inadequate, and they're nocturnal, i.e., they stay up. They're out and about. Okay. And because the knife was chosen, because a knife was chosen, then of a personal control mechanism, not like a gun, where, the offender in Colorado, for an example, last night, just sprayed the crowd because he just wanted to, create chaos and kill. This individual, because he used a blitz style attack in a silent method, i.e., breaking into the house, we call that a hot prowl, where the victims are home when somebody comes in. Individual who may have been studying these victims, may have been studying the house, and he probably would have had a minimal use of alcohol that night so that he can maintain his mood and control his anxiousness in relation during the crime. Okay. He wanted minimal situational stress. And he probably, lives alone somewhere, but he may live near or work near the scene that brought him into the environment or the contact point with these girls. So hypothetically, if that's a house where there are 6 women, college age girls, and he has studied them, i.e., their movement, paid attention, watched their social media context, he then creates a fantasy, and then he executes that fantasy. But because it's not sexual in nature, i.e., there was no indication of an assault on that way, then the significance of who he targeted first would indicate the circle of influence that individual runs in. And it could be any one of the 4 victims. My guess, though, it's not going to be Ethan because he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I would even suspect that the suspect was surprised to find him. So, event, significant behavioral changes. So, as the public, we need to pay attention to that guy who just, we call him creepy guy, right? That weirdo. And women, you all know who that guy is in your circle of influence. Okay. He could have a military history, but he was probably discharged as unsuitable. And his arrest records, if he has them, and there's a high probability this person may, would be nuisance type of offenses, burglaries, fetishes, voyeurism, that type of situation. Okay. Because typically this type of offender lives with, unstable relationships around them. Because it is a targeted attack, and the law enforcement keeps mentioning that, and I say that, yeah, it is going to be likely a male. In this particular case, 98% of, I would put a 98 percentile number on it, just, or 1 to 10, I'd put a 10 on it, that it's going to be a male. And it's going to be something in his life that he felt rejected and or could not blend in socially with the girls. And as a result of that, unskilled work. I see the question come up, what kind of occupation? Unskilled. Could even be a student. Probably not, but I don't know. It's somebody that had access at some point to that environment because he felt very close to comfortable to attack his first victim, which moved him to a second victim, and then 3 and 4. And we don't know the sequence. And that's important because the authorities want to hold that back. But it could be somebody that had access to that home. Yeah, Miss Story, like a handyman. It could be. Absolutely. It could be. But that's the type of individual, because usually, they're living alone with, or they're living with a significant older female, but they're night owls. This individual's out, okay? And the frenzied blitz style attack is because he's attempting to silence the victim quickly. And the sudden violence to the victim also brings death rapidly. Unfortunately, not I'm being blunt there, but at the same time, these children probably did not suffer. Okay. Now, the defensive wounds were obviously if they were in a REM sleep or deep sleep, they wake up and their hands go up automatically. And typical defense wounds, when a stabbing, you see them web the fingers and, of course, across the fingers, and or even the hand where victims grab the weapons. Okay. So this individual is controlling each of the 4, and it's not difficult, as crazy as that sounds, if the individual has thought through the type of blitzkrieg attack, right? Because he dispersonalized them immediately. And I'll just say this without knowing, but if it's from here up, right, from the chest level up, okay, then immediately that is what's the word I'm looking for? He's depersonalizing that individual almost immediately. So that could also shift the offender into a thrill kill type of problem. Not necessarily, it is a targeted problem, but the offender himself to get these people or this person or persons in that house for the thrill. Okay. And typically, then you would see post behavior. And that's why it's significant right now for behavioral changes of people. If you know anybody out there, tell them to pay attention to that, weirdo and see if there's anything there, and then immediately call the cops. Let them process it. Okay. Because this is a very controlled individual going in, uncontrolled coming out. Because it looks like it's a disorganized crime scene, organized partially This one can go both directions because of the blitzkrieg and the focused rage. Okay. Overkill. Everybody tracking me so far? All right. I'm going to put a couple things up real fast and thank everybody. Well, I got time. Thank you so much. Tammy, you're great. Welcome, Dawn. Thank you, Hope. And Brandy, welcome. Welcome to TIR and the family. We're so grateful that you're here. We just ask that you subscribe. We're so grateful. Thank you. All right. Everybody tracking me? Our family, we love you guys. You add the other dynamics into this, right? We add the other dynamics of, college, right? We add the, potential that we have to wait to see what the blood alcohol tells us, the depth, that potentially could put, the children, thank you. And, what does that do, right? Are they really deep asleep? Yeah. They could be, that may be a merciful, man, I just, the parents going through this are just, it's just unfathomable, unfathomable. And so it's up to us to be responsible on social media, as law enforcement has asked us to be. It's up to us to not have rumors, speculation, any of that stuff. Let's stick to the facts of what we know. I'm given an assessment in relationship to what I know. And so, they're going to expect us to do the same, right? This type of offender, could be undergoing significant behavior changes now. Drug, alcohol, religious situations where, now they're, they never maybe drank, but now they're drinking excessively because this person has crossed a threshold now. And the fans, i.e., what comes next, right? Where do we go? He could be angry or depressed post the crime. And now that, he's projecting forward, okay, I've got to monitor now, what everybody's saying, what social media is saying. For all I know, he's in our chat. We've got almost 2,000 people here. But this individual is going to stay controlled here. Schizophrenia, probably not, because he was methodical. And the type of knife, we don't know what type it is. We know with stab wounds, if there's a hilt, to the knife, then typically you're going to see that during the autopsy. Okay, but they're not going to tell us that, and nor should they. Okay, because that weapon is critical. That weapon is critical right now. Okay. So I don't know if this individual is going to be, manic depressive psychosis or anything like that, because we have an individual targeting at 3:00 in the morning or whatever the time frame's going to end up being, right? Can this be his crime? It could be. Yeah, great question, Mary. It could be that, this could be his first rodeo. I think there will probably be lesser scenarios in his past, maybe voyeurism, again, but he's been processing them. This individual, has thought through this. I don't see it as being, and by the way, am I still getting good connection here? I'm coming out in and out again. All right, let me see if I can switch over one more time. I apologize, everybody. All right, how's that? I'm good. Yeah, thank you. I apologize. Welcome to modern technology, right? Um, but because the individual chose the type of weapon, the individual chose the hour. Hang on, a motorcycle's going by. I'm waiting for the lightning strike. It comes in threes. So anyway, I don't know if I've got the Hell's Angels outside or not, but they're they're revving up right next to where I'm at. So my audio is garbling off often. Yeah, we don't know the type of knife yet, right? K bars or whatever. You know, this type of crime like this, though, is very well structured, meaning he was able to control four people, including a very athletic male. A young man who, has a tremendous background athletically. And, he was able to control the whole scenario right away. So, somebody who is, schizophrenic or, mentally, obviously this person's unstable and dangerous, but that's what makes him dangerous because he's able to also have the mechanism of control within inside of himself. And it's organized control and to be stealthy about it. Uh, I have no idea who was attacked first. Uh, my, I don't want to guess. We'll wait till the authorities tell us. I will. My feeling is that the young man um, and his girlfriend were the two most difficult to control. And so let's hypothesize that he went to the top floor first. And on the top floor, he, took care of what what he did. And then if he came down and the other two, the male and the female, were on the second floor, then he resolves that situation, attacking primarily the male first. But I just had a case in Texas where the suspect jumped in between both of them. It was a male and female, and with a knife, and killed them both in the bed by being in between them. So he was doing this on both sides. So it is not impossible for this individual. Now, the advantage to that for law enforcement, unfortunately, to the detriment of this animal, is all of the victims' evidence coming back. Coming back. Okay. Okay. A large fixed blade knife. Okay. That's what the Emmy is saying, or the Emmy is saying. Okay. So there is in stab wounds what they call lines of cleavage and Langer lines, i.e., the elasticity of the skin. Okay, in any autopsy, uh, a doctor will, you know, not tell you specifically, um, unless there's a hilt or something like that in its wounds. Okay, because there are topical lines that are drawn on the map of the human body that corresponds to fibers of the dermis, i.e., of the skin's elasticity. Okay, so when something is hit, the skin adapts to it when it's removed out. Okay, and the only other way you can tell is if it's post-mortem, because then typically there's no blood residue around. So the type of knife can be described as either, you know, the depth of the knife, you can figure that out. The angle of the weapon, you can figure that out. And but the type of weapon, you won't know until you have it. Right? You won't know until you have it. So here's a question: why are there no videos from the bar of hours between the couple leaving the party? Mary, that is a great question. I do not know that answer. I do not know that. Can they tell? Gene says, can they tell which was killed first of order? Yes, no, but it's hard to say. It's hard to say. So, I can't really, I don't want to guess. They probably know inside of that house. So, great question, though, Jen. Thank you so much for asking that question. All right, so let me go and grab some of your questions. I'm going to leave these kids up here. Okay. And let's see here. Could the length of time delay in victims being found make a difference in investigation? Kathy, not really, because it sounds like when the other two roommates woke up, somebody discovered, somebody on the second floor, and it sounds like that's when the first 911 call came in, right? So, well, I'll be present for the family of many lives. Well, yeah, boy, isn't that the truth? Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah, coexist. Let's see. I believe 100% that when it's all said and done, there will be many videos of this person. That won't surprise me as well. I will not disagree with that one for sure. Great comment. Very great comment. Um, let's see here. One more up here. Dawn, you became a member. Thank you so much. So grateful for that. Let's see here. Do I believe the person was waiting inside the home on them? Well, that's a great question, because it looks like the time frame of when Ethan got home and when the girls got home, he may have come in after them. So, time will tell, right? The investigation, again, let's not forget, the investigation's fluid. I wonder if he was familiar to them, returned that night with them, or separated. Lots of photo of him at parties in the house, in my opinion. Okay. Would it be considered two crime scenes on different floors? Yes, there are actually um, multiples. Yeah, including the first floor. Because if the suspect went down there, there could be evidence of him even trying to get to the first two individuals if they're there. Why is the behavior unit called in? Because they're just going to do a behavioral assessment for the type of suspect that they could be looking for. And they're also going to give interview advice. Let's see here. There were no tracks of blood outside home, and wonder if he showered after removed his shoes. I have no idea. That's a great thought, but typically no in a situation like this, because once he's controlled the scene, i.e. everybody, and he doesn't know what's down on the bottom, I won't be surprised if one of the girls at the bottom heard something, if they're at the bottom, and locked their door and the suspect knew it and he's out. Okay. I don't know. But we'll soon find out, I'm sure of it. I'm sure of it. But let's not guess again, right? Let's, we can theorize, but let's just not, throw other people under the bus unless we know for a fact. If the suspect showered, that would be more towards a offender who's done this before. If he felt that comfortable, then staying in the house after all four were deceased, that is a confidence level of an experienced, organized offender with sadistic tendencies. This individual does not have sadistic tendencies other than to murder. To murder. These four individuals and children were targeted specifically. This is not a random, opportunist situation. And now that he has gone through this process, he already knows he's down that lane. And why I believe, okay, Karen just handed me a question. It says, why do I believe that the perpetrator is male? Because of the amount of control. Because of the amount of control over Ethan. And the fact that it's a blitzkrieg into the beds. The children are all sleeping in their beds. And all of a sudden, there's an attack. So that means in order to control the entire environment, you have a hero, in my opinion, Ethan, that you have to deal with. And I suspect the suspect did not anticipate him there that evening. And I would suspect Ethan is an overkill. And then, of course, the other three victims are also overkills, but out of rage, okay, and rejection, i.e. the suspect's inability to, see himself or as an individual who, could have associated with anybody, like this, right? This individual has not very many close friends. Not very many close friends. You can bet that, he is cunning though. And he's organized in relationship to projecting this wannabe persona. Okay. This wannabe persona. Because he immediately depersonalized them. And so it's the spontaneity, being spontaneous in relationship to that, keeps the crime scene very tightly clustered, as we would say. Okay. He attacks quickly, controlled, and he eliminates as quickly as possible. Call logs show a guy threatening kids on campus with a knife in September. More recently, a guy threatened a girl and her sorority friends. Great, great, great observation. Those are the kind of people that we would want to do what we call an FI on, a field interview, and get this individual, figured out quickly, whoever that individual is. And Ethan was a triplet. Okay, I did not know that. Okay. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I'll tell you. Let's see here. Could he have knife injuries? Gold Star, that is a possibility that he himself, based on some of the defense wounds potentially on the victims, he himself could also have cut himself, and which would have left, mixtures with inside of the crime scene of itself. Okay. So I don't have an age on this individual because um, we just don't know. I mean, he's not very sophisticated though, and he came from an unstable environment where his father was unstable. I will tell you that. And as a child, he had very harsh discipline. Okay, but during the crime, his mood was probably anxious, and it was a transfer of aggression. Okay. But the transfer of aggression is anger towards, women. And Brandon Wilson had this same problem. When I interviewed Brandon Wilson, remember he told me that he stood behind his mom when he was 16 because she had an affair with one of the coaches at his school. And he just had all this rage inside of himself. And his first victim that he was going to attack was a young girl who was walking on the beach, and he came over this sand berm from the beach. They were dredging the harbor at the time, and that he went up to her, and she just kind of got the creepy vibe, like, "Whoa, wait a minute, where's this guy coming from?" And immediately rejected him. And he went in this rage of, okay, I don't know if I got to do it here, and he started looking around and he started processing, would he get captured? And then he changed his victimology immediately to that 9-year-old little boy. But was interesting, after he killed that little boy, the following kill, attempted kill, was a woman in West Hollywood when he got off the bus in West Hollywood in LA. He got off the bus and he attacked a woman and stabbed her 43 times. So that rage came out about his mom, even after killing a 9-year-old little boy. Fortunately, she did not die. But this guy like this is holding something that exploded. Now, the challenge that we're going to have is it's going to build again. And now we could get some SA deviancy in correlation to it. So, interesting. So I'm going to read Mary's comment here. The chief said they do not have a suspect in custody, but did not say they do not have a suspect. Does that mean they may have an idea who it is? That is a great question, and I do not know the answer, Mary, at this point. We'll let that is a great comment, but let's wait to hear what they say. Okay, let's wait to hear what they say. He had the knife on him, so it had to be planned. I would agree with that. Goofy girl. Yep. I would agree there was some thought process that went into this, actually probably a lot. of thought process, and I suspect that his courage was built up and then he executed it. Again, we've got to go back to, this individual is not really connected sexually. Remember, there's types of verbal, nonverbal, and sexual behavior, right? Those are the three types of behaviors. Are any other crimes in danger? Anyone else in the U.S.? Do you have a national crime register? Yes. It's called VICAP. It's the Violent Information Criminal Apprehension Program. And VICAP, the FBI runs that. In fact, Greg from the Cold Case Foundation was the director of that program when he ran the behavior science unit. So all of the details are going in to VICAP. Yes, and that he took the knife with him, I just saw. Or, as Sherilyn says, or he always carries a knife with him. Yeah. Well, let's find out, what type of what's the difference between a profiler and a behavior analyst? A behavior analyst is trained by profilers, right? And so I attended, school with Mary Ellen O'Toole years ago. My expertise, though, is in kids. Okay? And so the difference is profilers usually spend a year at Quantico. It is a specific type of course. Ann Burgess obviously was one of the most famous nurses who was put into the behavior science unit early on with Ressler and John Douglas and, Greg Cooper at the time, a variety of different people. So profilers are individuals that spend years studying in Quantico. Behavior analysts go to a mini school. It's basically broke down, and then those are taught in regional levels. When I went through it, it was 1990, and it was taught on a regional level in California. There were 3 schools that were put on years ago, and so I didn't go back to Quantico. Okay, so if somebody's never been back to Quantico, they're not a profiler. They never have, and they never will be. Okay, criminal behavior analysis, or CIA criminal investigative analysis, is an investigative tool in understanding human behavior at a crime scene. That's basically what it comes down to. And profilers tell you the psychological aspects of the offender at that crime scene. And then the practical application, the CIA application, is what it looks like at the crime scene. And that's what I'm trained in. Okay, so there's two different lanes there. I hope that made sense. And I hope that helps you. Okay. Let's see here. Do I know Detective Maine? I do not. I've heard of him. I know he did a bunch of stuff a long time ago. So he sounds like a great guy, and he's probably a great investigator. Let's see here. Could this be drug-induced behavior? Probably not. Probably not. Because of the controlled nature of the crime. It's not like, methamphetamine or anything like that going off here. Okay. That is a great question, though, Kylie. Excellent. All right. So we're an hour and 24 minutes into this, everybody. I just want you always to know how grateful we are, Karen and I, and many of our friends here. Let's see here. Indy says, I'm having a problem with my mouse. Sorry. It still reeks of jealousy to me. Perhaps this person was jealous of the close friendship, as he or she had no such close friendships. That is a great comment, Indy. This definitely, has some of those types of overtones. The individual, though, I would submit to you is probably going to be, um, he's probably paid very close attention to all of the victims in that house, excluding Ethan. Ethan was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But the girls were his targets. And I think if he would have had access into the other two victims' rooms, and I'm going to suspect, and this is just my gut telling me, their bedrooms were locked. And he did not have access into them. So we go back to that one picture of him coming in, and I'm trying to get my mouse to work correctly because, of course, my mouse has decided, as well as the rest of the other stuff tonight, has decided not to work correctly. If we go back to this picture here, this one right here, let me move this. This tells us a tremendous amount of the first decision process the suspect makes when he comes into the house. Okay? Yeah, good point, I am. And here's what I mean by that. So that's the front door. So when he comes, let's hypothesize he comes through that door, okay, and not through the kitchen or the other points of entry potentials. Okay? Or that's the door he leaves out of. Okay. If he would have come through that door, the first decision he has to make is check the other doors down below on the first floor. I.e., if those two rooms are available to him, then he's got to make a decision. So I would submit that there was something in that environment that spooked him. So in order to maintain control, he then moves up to the second floor. And he may have even quickly gone up to the third. I don't know. We don't know. But either way, his first blitzkrieg attack is, with the children sleeping. All four victims, it sounds like, based on what we know in the public arena. All four of the victims were sleeping. Now, you get alcohol on board, and that could be a very deep sleep for all four. But at some point, somebody woke up, multiple, it sounds like, and there's defense wounds based on what the coroner said. So there was an attempt to fight off the attacker, or at least stop the attack. So once the first victim is killed, that emboldens this individual. And this is why this was a very stealthy, thought out, the suspect's moving quietly still through the residence, and then at some point accomplishes all four of these horrific murders successfully. And now he then has to make a move out the door. And he's got a couple of exit points. I don't know. The authorities will figure that out. He's got a couple of exit points. Back downstairs, out the front door, out the second balcony or the sliding door in the kitchen, out the door. And then he moves stealthily where nobody observes him. So we don't know about what his point of exit was. But if he had gone back down the stairwell here and out the front door, that would have probably put into play the other two victims on the bottom who may have heard something or seen something. And we just don't have that information. But I would submit they probably had their doors locked because they were on the first floor. Especially, if there was a keypad on the door and that number was known to everybody, in their environment, in their circle of influence. So my takeaway on this right now, and being very careful, obviously, is to follow the track that the law enforcement is providing us, and stay with the concept of, and Karen just gave me a question I'm going to read here. It's about why are they protecting the 911 caller? Okay. And I'll answer that just as a thought. And they're keeping it close to the chest because it potentially could be, a variety of different things. Trauma to that victim. Okay. Would a scent dog be useful in this case to track possible suspect DNA? They did a scent dog. I saw there was a dog out there tracking. It could have been an article search dog looking for a murder weapon. That's probably why the dumpsters were taken, looking for evidence. But if this suspect was still this sophisticated in relationship to plan this out and then look for his opportunity to strike, i.e., that early in the morning, knowing that the children would be sleeping, or at least the girls be sleeping, because I believe those are his intended targets. Again, I'm going to say this. I think Ethan is a hero here. Because I think with that athletic ability that young man had, and quite frankly, some of the girls, they would have put up one heck of a fight and may have even won. But it's a blitzkrieg. He hits them while they're sleeping. Okay. And that frenzy of attack, was an attempt to silence them quickly, to maintain that control mechanism over them right away. He had to attack them quickly, because that sudden violence allows him to move on to the next target. And meaning death comes quickly. And that's why it's going to be important to know where the wound patterns were, because I suspect they're going to be from here up, and it's going to be a blitzkrieg pretty quickly coming in there. So that said, let's continue to track this TIR family. You guys are absolutely, as always, the best. We're so grateful for you. Let's continue to, take care of each other and, continue to look out for one another. We love you here at TIR. If you're new to this channel, please like and subscribe. Pass this out to everybody. Continue to be kind to one another, and take care of each other. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Talk to you soon.
That everything seems to crumble around you. I know that you feel all alone in this world, but you have to put your trust into us, and we will help you through, 'cause we only want what's best for you. I know that you are having trouble believing right now that everything is gonna be alright. I know that you feel all alone in this world, but you have to put your trust into us, and we will help you through, 'cause we only want what is best for you.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No time outs, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away, you and me, go to our favorite place. Feeling the sun on my face in Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. With you, Hawaii. I need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a while.